When we're working with inequalities, we're going to often use a number line to express our solutions because unlike an equation where there's typically one answer, an inequality has a ton of answers. So let's just start with some basics about how to graph on a number line. So this says to graph x is greater than 2. So in other words, all the numbers that are bigger than 2, like 3 or 4 or 17 or 5 million. So when I make my number lines, I usually just do the 1 or 2 numbers that I need. If you want to go ahead and include 0 and other numbers, that's fine, but I typically just include the number that is relevant or numbers that are relevant. We want to make sure that we include all the numbers that are bigger than 2, but 2 itself is not an answer. 2 is not greater than 2. 2.1 would work, but 2 is no good. So to show that, we're going to use just an open circle, not a not filled in circle, indicating that 2 itself is not a solution. All the numbers that are greater than 2, all the numbers bigger than 2, shade that way on the number line. So that's how I represent x is greater than 2. Be careful if your inequality is ever sort of flipped around and the x is on the right hand side instead of the left hand side like it was over here, because people have this bad habit of thinking whatever way the inequality symbol points, that's the way the arrow goes, and that's not the case. So when I do these, again, I'm going to get my number line started with -1. I always read from where the x is, so I kind of read it backwards, and it says x is greater than or equal to -1. If it's weird for you to read backwards, then just go ahead and rewrite it for you. Just remember that inequality symbol, that alligator mouth, if you want to think of it that way, is going to open up the same way. Since it's opening up towards the x here, it's going to open up towards the x there. So my inequality says x is greater than or equal to -1, so we want all the numbers bigger than that. And this time -1 does count, because -1 is greater than or equal to -1. So to show that, I'm going to have a filled in or a closed circle. And again, all the numbers bigger than -1 go to the right. Those are some of the basics. Let's go ahead and try a couple that we actually have to solve. Now, solving an inequality is very, very similar to solving an equation. I'm going to draw the lines to separate my sides, get my variables together. The couple big differences, one of the biggest differences is I'm going to graph the solution like I just showed you, and then there's one other little thing that should set off alarms in your head. See the alarm clock? Or the alarm. Which we'll get to in this second example. But let's start here. So I got variables on both sides. Let's combine them and get them on the same side like we've been doing with equations. Just be careful that that inequality doesn't magically flip directions on you or become an equal sign. I'll add 4 to both sides. I'll kind of do that step in my head. So 2x, and then divide both sides by 2. Again, if I read from the variable, I'm going to say x has to be less than 3. If it helps you to rewrite it, then rewrite it. Just make sure that alligator mouth still opens up towards the 3. And if I graph this on a number line, 3 is going to be the number that I need. I'm not allowed to be equal to 3, so I'll have an open circle showing that 3 is not a solution. And then all the numbers less than 3 go to the left. Numbers like 0 or -20 are all in that direction. So nothing really different there other than the graph. But watch what's going to happen on this second example. There's one thing that's going to set off alarms and should tell you to do something a bit different. I'm going to start by subtracting 8 from both sides to get that out of there. Bring down to -2x, make sure that subtraction sign comes down as a negative. Has to be less than or equal to 12. At this point, I'm going to divide by -2. And as soon as you hear yourself saying those words, I'm going to divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, that alarm needs to go off in your head. And what the alarm needs to tell you is that, wait, something special has to happen. And what that is you need to make sure you flip the direction of your inequality symbol. Okay? Anytime you multiply or divide by a negative, make sure you flip the direction of the inequality symbol. So this is what I want to graph. X is greater than or equal to -6. So I'll get my number line. Since I am allowed to be equal to -6, I'll go ahead and fill in that circle because -6 is a solution. All the numbers that are greater than -6 would be numbers like 0 or 20 or pi or 37 billion. They would all be that way on the number line.